and he put his hands up, and then he just, I don't know, we caught eye contact, then he like grabbed the gun. It was kind of like a struggle, and I pulled the gun back from him, and then I fired 3 times.
If you had it to do over again, knowing that you would go to jail for a long time, would you still confess?
I would do it again. Because I don't think there was no other way around it except me dying.
On December 15th, 2010, Travell Coleman, aka G. Depp, walked into a police station and said the words that would wipe out his career, cost him his freedom, and break 17 years of silence. "I shot and killed someone."
It was kind of like a struggle, and I pulled the gun back from him, and then I fired 3 times.
At the time, G. Depp was moving okay in the industry under Sean Combs' wing, with a couple solid records and real momentum behind him. But the moment he let his conscience take over, everything came to a stop. Let's get into it. G. Depp was born Travell Gerald Coleman on November 19, 1974, and raised in the James Weldon Johnson houses in East Harlem, right off Park Avenue near 114th Street. His mother wanted him living somewhere safer, but young Travell was stubborn. He insisted on staying in the neighborhood, and in the end, he was mostly raised by his grandmother. By the late 80s and early 90s, the Johnson houses were ground zero for East Harlem's crack epidemic. Poverty was everywhere. Open-air drug markets ran day and night. Violence wasn't shocking, it was routine. For kids growing up there, the streets came with their own rules, their own hierarchies, and an unspoken survival mentality. You learned fast, or you didn't last. Coleman later admitted that the environment shaped him in ways he didn't fully understand at the time. "I was a follower in a way," he said years later. "I wasn't really thinking. I wasn't really being an individual." By his late teens, he was already deep in it. Addicted to drugs and making money selling coke for $500, he bought a .40 caliber handgun. He was just 18 years old, barely a month away from turning 19, when everything changed. Around that same time, he picked his rap name, G. Depp, short for Ghetto Dependent. It was something he chose as a teenager, not realizing how painfully accurate it would become. The ghetto owned him. Some people also knew him by another nickname, the Deputy. On the night of October 18th, rolling into the early hours of October 19th, 1993, Coleman hopped on his bicycle and rode over to Park Avenue and East 114th Street, right outside the same projects he grew up in. Under some scaffolding nearby, he spotted a man standing alone. That man was John Henkel, a 32-year-old from Queens, married with 3 kids. Why Henkel was in East Harlem at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday near the Johnson houses has never been publicly explained. Coleman rode up and tried to rob him at gunpoint, demanding money.
And I approached him. He didn't seem like he saw me, so I just approached him. And then when I approached him, I asked him where the money was.
Henkel didn't cooperate. According to Coleman's own confession years later, the man stepped toward him and grabbed for the gun. Coleman pulled back and fired 3 shots into Henkel's chest.
Then he like grabbed the gun. It was kind of like a struggle, and I pulled the gun back from him, and then I fired 3 times.
Then he jumped back on his bike, rode off, and eventually tossed the gun into the East River. Here's the detail that haunted everything afterward. The next day, Coleman noticed police walking around the neighborhood, asking residents if they'd heard anything about a shooting. They weren't announcing a homicide. They were just canvassing. Coleman took that as a sign the man must have survived. He never told a single person what he had done. For the next 17 years, he lived in a strange moral limbo. He carried the weight of having shot someone, but convinced himself the victim lived. That belief, even if it wasn't true, was the only thing keeping him functional.
So years went by, you know what I mean? I didn't know what had happened to the guy.
Did you confide to anybody about what you did, or you kept it to yourself?
Nah, I mean, as far as the situation, nobody knew about that per se, you know what I mean? Like, except for, family, I had, told them, you know, a little bit before that, you know, I started really coming to a point where it was feeling like that was what I...
While carrying that secret, Coleman chased music. Under the name G-Dep, he started pushing demos around Harlem. His big break came through fellow Harlem rapper Black Rob, who listened to his material and personally brought it to Sean Combs. And Black Rob didn't just put in a casual word, he championed him. As a trial run, G-Dep first appeared on Black Rob's debut album Life Story in 2000. The performances landed. Soon after, Combs signed G-Dep to a 5-album deal reportedly worth $350,000. Inside Bad Boy's inner circle, people said G-Dep was second only to Black Rob as Diddy's right-hand man. The two Harlem rappers were tight, practically inseparable during studio sessions. Then came the biggest moment of G-Dep's career. On April 3, 2001, he released Let's Get It, featuring Diddy and Black Rob, produced by Yogi Sugar Bear Graham with extra production from Mario Winans. The song sampled Al Green's Love and Happiness and quickly became a Harlem anthem. The record performed solidly. It reached 80 on the Billboard Hot 100, 18 on Hot R&B/hip hop songs, and 5 on Hot Rap songs. For a kid from the Johnson houses, it was everything he dreamed of. G-Dep had one more real moment in the spotlight after Let's Get It, and that came with Special Delivery. The track became his other notable single from Child of the Ghetto. It peaked at 3 on Hot Rap songs and 59 on Hot R&B/hip hop songs. It never cracked the Hot 100, but culturally, it hit hard. In 2001, it was everywhere. Heavy radio rotation, club play, and tied directly to the Harlem Shake dance craze. The energy felt real, especially in New York. A remix dropped in 2002 to try and stretch the album's life a little longer. But here's what most people don't realize. By that point, Bad Boy wasn't the powerhouse it used to be. Biggie had been gone for 4 years. Mace had walked away from rap to become a pastor. The LOX had publicly demanded their release from the label. Behind the scenes, the machine was slowing down fast. At that moment, G-Dep and Black Rob were basically the last soldiers holding the line for Bad Boy Records. Critics described Special Delivery as a minor hit at best, and that pretty much summed it up. It wasn't that the song was bad, it was that the era had changed. Bad Boy no longer had the same grip on hip-hop, and you could feel the momentum slipping. Then came the album. Child of the Ghetto dropped on November 20th, 2001, and the numbers told a rough story. It peaked at 106 on the Billboard 223 on the top R&B/hip-hop albums chart. For a major label debut with heavy backing, that was disappointing. Not long after, Sean Combs made a business call. Coleman later explained how it went down. He called and said, "Meet me at the studio. We need to talk." He was going through a rough time and had to make decisions. He had to cut off some loose ends, and I was just one of them. Just like that, G-Dep was shelved, then dropped, and that moment broke him. He had 3 school-age kids to feed, and suddenly, no income. In interviews with XXL magazine, he admitted that everything spiraled from desperation. The dream was gone. The money stopped. The pressure hit all at once. What followed was a brutal descent into PCP, angel dust. The drug completely tore through his mental health. He wasn't just getting high, he was losing touch with reality. His first wife, Crystal Sutton, later gave a chilling interview to Vibe magazine describing what life was like during his worst years. She talked about episodes where Coleman insisted he was Jesus Christ. Other times, he accused her of being an undercover police officer. PCP-fueled paranoia and delusions became normal in their home. Crystal even described moments where he seemed to be wrestling with invisible forces, what she called drug-coaxing demons. It was chaos. Between 2003 and 2010, Coleman was arrested more than 25 times. Drug charges, burglary, grand larceny, trespassing. His record became a revolving door: arrest, release, relapse, repeat. In a 2009 interview, he openly talked about his addiction. While still actively using PCP, he admitted he was getting high from time to time, even as he publicly acknowledged the drug was destroying him.
I mean, what type of drugs were they? I mean, obviously it wasn't just like weed or something like that. I mean, I've seen people pretty much be...
No doubt. I mean, I was dealing with that PCP, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know what I mean? I was just out there, you know what I mean? You know, PCP, you know, it just leads to all kind of
Right, mental stuff.
Yeah, promiscuous like an attitude. You know what I mean? Like, so, but that was basically what it was. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. So.
That's one of the saddest parts of his story. He knew what PCP was doing to him, and he still couldn't stop. In 2007, he tried one last musical Hail Mary, releasing an independent album called Bad Boy with fellow former Bad Boy rapper Loon. Nothing came of it. The project barely made noise. It felt like a final attempt at relevance that just disappeared. Ironically, Loon would later convert to Islam, move to the Middle East, and end up sentenced to 14 years for drug trafficking. Bad Boy's roster really did feel cursed, and through all of this, Coleman was still carrying his deepest secret, the 1993 shooting. By 2010, he finally entered a 30-day rehab program and started working the 12 steps through Narcotics Anonymous. It was during the step where you're supposed to admit your wrongs and make amends that something clicked. He realized he'd been avoiding the biggest truth of his life. It seemed like it just wasn't fair for me to be happy, Coleman later said. In order to restore balance to my life and someone's family, I wanted to turn myself in and see what happened. I was willing to put myself on the line, whether or not he passed on.
You know, and you know, I was, you know, willing to, you know, put myself on the line if, you know, whether or not he passed on or not. I just, you know, I needed to get that off of my mind. So, you know, the spirit moved me to you know, turn myself in. I went to the precinct.
That moment is one of the most powerful parts of his entire story. He decided to confess. But even that didn't go smoothly. Coleman actually tried to turn himself in twice before police took him seriously. He walked into the 25th precinct in East Harlem and told detectives he had shot someone years earlier. Because of his reputation and history with PCP, they assumed he was high and talking nonsense. They brushed him off. He left his cell phone number with a detective. No one called. He came back again. Same result. By December 15th, 2010, G. Depp had reached the end of the road with himself. He walked into the 25th precinct for the third time. This time, he wasn't high. He wasn't rambling. He wasn't confused. He was calm, clear-headed, and locked in. I shot and killed someone 17 years ago. He waived his Miranda rights on the spot. Didn't ask for a lawyer. Didn't hesitate. He laid everything out. Riding his bike that night, spotting a man under scaffolding near Park Avenue and 114th Street, trying to rob him. The man grabbing for the gun. 3 shots fired. Fleeing on his bicycle, then dumping the weapon into the East River.
Then I fired 3 times. And I didn't realize it was hitting him or anything. I just, cause I didn't see anything. You know, I just fired.
Police immediately matched his story to a cold case from October 19th, 1993. That was when they told him the truth he'd been unknowingly avoiding for nearly 2 decades. The man didn't survive. He died right there at the scene. Hearing that the victim had actually died hit him like a truck. At first, prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, which in New York means life without parole. Later, that charge was reduced to second-degree murder. When Coleman was arraigned on January 13th, 2011, he pleaded not guilty. His attorney, Anthony Rico, had one main angle. Yes, Coleman confessed to shooting someone, but that didn't automatically mean it was the same victim police had on file. There were 2 big discrepancies. First, timing. Coleman told detectives he thought the shooting happened sometime in February or March. The cold case they matched him to happened in October. That's a 6 or 7 month gap. Second, the description. Coleman remembered his victim as blonde and clean-shaven. The actual victim had brown hair and facial hair. Rico argued that 17 years of heavy PCP use had warped Coleman's memory. He suggested police were eager to close a long-dead case and simply plugged Coleman's confession into the closest match. But the prosecution pushed back hard. Manhattan ADA David Drucker focused on what did line up. Same location, same caliber weapon, 3 shots, attempted robbery, same general circumstances. The smaller details, he said, were exactly what you'd expect from someone recalling a traumatic event nearly 2 decades later while battling addiction. Even Drucker admitted this wasn't a typical case. He had no ulterior motive. the prosecutor said, nothing to gain other than within himself. On April 17, 2012, the jury convicted Coleman of second-degree murder, but something unusual happened. The jury foreman, Jim Nelson, wrote a personal letter to Judge Michael Obis asking for leniency. He said the verdict was reached with a heavy heart. That almost never happens. Juries don't usually convict someone and then ask the judge to go easy. On May 8, 2012, Judge Obis sentenced G. Depp to 15 years to life, the absolute minimum allowed. The victim left behind a wife and 3 children, and even within the family, reactions were split. One brother was furious. He publicly demanded that clemency never be granted and said Coleman should rot in jail. He even went as far as saying G. Depp should have just kept quiet, that confessing only reopened wounds for a family that had spent 17 years trying to move forward. Another brother felt differently. He said he was thankful the system finally worked and that justice, however delayed, had been served. Coleman was sent upstate, where prison became his new reality. Behind bars, he didn't waste the time. He earned an associate's degree. He helped run anti-violence and sobriety programs for other inmates. He filled notebooks with music, more than 400 songs by his own count. Later, he said he was ready to show all of it to Sean Combs. He also found love again. On May 18, 2017, he married Letitia Evans Coleman, a recording artist who goes by Hustle Bunny, inside prison. They had first connected over the phone back in 2015. Both had been married before. Letitia brought 5 children into the relationship and became one of his loudest supporters on the outside, pushing for his release and speaking publicly about what she called the GWF movement. Then came one of the hardest moments of his sentence. In April 2021, Coleman learned through the prison email kiosk that Black Rob had died at 52 from cardiac arrest. Rob had been battling lupus, kidney failure, diabetes, and had suffered multiple strokes. Toward the end, he was homeless, relying on a GoFundMe to survive. G. Depp later said Rob was closer than just a rap friend. That was the closest I could say, aside from family, he told All Hip Hop. When I heard he died, it felt like he was right there with me. The clemency process took years, but what made it truly rare was who backed it. Both the same prosecutor who put him away and the same judge who sentenced him supported his release. That almost never happens. So, in December 2023, Kathy Hochul granted executive clemency, commuting Coleman's sentence. Out of 16 people approved that month, G. Depp was the only convicted murderer. The governor's office noted that he'd been consumed by guilt when he confessed. On April 4, 2024, after serving about 13 years, Coleman walked free. He was 49 years old. He posted the moment on Instagram, "Free at last." Not long after his release, he showed up backstage at the LOX's 30th anniversary tour stop in New Haven. That's where Jadakiss surprised him by pulling out a stack of cash and handing it to him. It mattered. Jadakiss isn't bad boy. He comes from the LOX, the same group that famously beefed with Diddy and demanded their release from the label. Yet here he was, one of the first people in the industry to show G. Depp real, tangible love. Then came the reunion everyone talked about. On September 8, 2024, G. Depp and Diddy linked up in Harlem for the first time in years. A video posted by Diddy's son showed them hugging. G. Depp later shared a photo of them sitting on a stoop together. He told Fox 5 he had 400 songs ready and hoped they might work again.
Oh, that's crazy. I thought he saw him already. There's a war going on outside.
But then, 8 days later, Diddy was arrested on federal racketeering and trafficking charges, and despite being dropped, forgotten in prison, and largely ignored for over a decade, G. Depp still showed up outside the courthouse during Diddy's federal case to offer support. "I love him as a brother," he told TMZ. "I'm just coming to support him." On the accusations, he said, "I can't in all good conscience say he's guilty of everything he's accused of. I'm not one to judge." He also mentioned he'd been hearing from Loon overseas, but admitted he wasn't sure if any other bad boy artists would show up. Almost nobody did. These days, Coleman works in music production at Scan Harbor, a nonprofit helping at-risk kids and families in Harlem and the South Bronx. He mentors teenagers, tells his story straight, and uses his life as a warning.